Massive news for the Dragon's Dogma 2 fans and pretty much anyone who likes good games. Because let's face it, Dragon's Dogma 2 was one of the more unique and better games that we have had, at least in the last 10 years, if we're being honest here. I know a lot of people loved it, but it kind of fizzled out of cultural relevance pretty quick because it was there, people played it, and well, it's a single player game that is not like Crimson Desert that has 150 hours of content technically. So people played it, finished the story, and well, that was it. And we knew that Dragon's Dogma 2 sold good numbers. So everyone was expecting, but where's the expansion? There has to be an expansion, right? And furthermore, there have not been any updates to the game in general for a very long time. Such a long time, in fact, people are rivaling it almost to Starfield in terms of not getting any updates. And now it's pretty much official, boys. Dragon's Dogma 2 is getting an expansion. And chances are pretty soon, in fact.
This game has not seen an update since April 8th, 2025. A lot of people were really bewildered by this because the expectation was that Dragon's Dogma 2 would get DLC very soon. The last actual post and update that we got from the official Dragon's Dogma Twitter account was here where we learned that 4 million Arisen around the world had joined Dragon's Dogma 2. So 4 million copies sold or 4 million players, depending on how you look at it. I don't know. Like they always kind of color up these stats. They say this is as of November 5th. So pretty decent. Compared to what something like Resident Evil is doing, though, Dragon's Dogma really isn't sniffing that territory, but that's still pretty good. However, it's fair to say that Dragon's Dogma 2 hasn't enjoyed...
For a franchise that effectively has come out of nowhere, because let's be real, the Dragon's Dogma 1 fans, they exist, true. But Dragon's Dogma, effectively for most people, including myself, was pretty much just a completely new thing out of the box. It did not have any previous cultural relevance in a lot of people's eyes.
The sustained sort of positive conversation that the first one did. The first one was just so distinct, especially at a time where like fantasy games were scratching and clawing for oxygen when a game like Skyrim had just came out about like 6 months prior, a little bit more than that, to Dragon's Dogma was Skyrim, right? So like Dragon's Dogma getting that kind of oxygen because it was so distinct in its boss fights and its world and its difficulty and the pawn system, like all these were really distinct elements that made it stand out. And over the years, as more people tried it with Dark Arisen and the additions to that, it really gained like a cult classic following and gained more sales over time where they could justify a sequel. But the second one really hasn't enjoyed that. It kind of came, made its impact, and like a lot of games just sort of faded out.
True. It's normal for a game to fade out, but man, Dragon's Dogma faded out really fast, honestly. I think people were talking about it just like maybe 2 weeks after its launch, which is not bad, but certainly not something tremendous. Even though this game had a lot of secrets, a lot of things to learn and whatnot. So it surprised me that it fell out of the cultural zeitgeist that fast, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Dragon's Dogma 2 is pretty much everyone who has played it is going to tell you, yeah, 5 FPS in cities is bad, but the game's amazing.
So now what we get here is this post on the Dragon's Dogma Twitter account. It is a 2-year anniversary post. I can't believe it's been 2 years. And there's a lot of key points here for Dragon's Dogma 2 lovers that you'll want to pay attention to, that eagle-eyed Reddit fans have picked out and in some cases deciphered. Also keep in mind here that they're doing a Dragon's Dogma 2 controller, which I find to be mighty interesting given nothing has happened in...
Consumers better start consuming because, oh my god, a Dragon's Dogma 2 themed controller. Like, time to go in dead, boys.
Involving Dragon's Dogma in a while now. They're greenlighting some merch collaborations. Could just be for the anniversary. I don't know. But you got to wonder if there's something else kind of cooking here. What I want you to pay attention to is this letter right here. You cannot read that. I have no idea what that says. That is in like an ancient language that...
But that is an actual real alphabet, though.
Is somewhere in the game. Well, someone went to the length of providing an alphabet for that. And they translated the letter. And the letter says sightings of griffins flying in from the northern region have been confirmed. This is, again, when you look at the whole image here, front and center. So it's there designed for you to be able to read. Another thing people are paying attention to is right here where my mouse is. We have a bigger image of that. Right here. Bro is not in the game. Bro has his back turned to the entire party. And he's obviously, when you look at the full image here, he's deliberately in view. But everyone else that's in the game is here, but he's not having it. So what you have here is a cryptic letter talking about griffins flying in from the northern region who invited blood. But in all seriousness, that's what has gotten the Dragon's Dogma community a bit in like oh, what's going on here? Because people...
I mean, this has to be the expansion, right? Because there's no way it's not. Again, you cannot have a game like Dragon's Dogma 2 that sells well, is successful, and doesn't get an expansion? Dude, expansions are a fraction of what the original game typically costs because you have already pretty much everything developed. You just need a little bit of art, and let's face it, artists are cheap and a dozen everywhere where you go. So that's not a problem to get them necessarily. It's not hard to make an expansion compared to a game. And if your game was successful, well, the only company that has not done this is, well, Rockstar with GTA 5, because they unironically thought that that's gonna not be worth the losses in shot cards, which is, I personally think, is absurdly stupid. Because they would break the internet by releasing expansion for GTA 5, but hey, they never did. That is the only company in history that has had a successful franchise and not released an expansion for it. Well, a DLC type of expansion for it. Dragon's Dogma was shocking in the sense that we hadn't heard anything about the DLC or anything at all. And you know why I think this is 100% a DLC? Because Dragon's Dogma 2 is Dragon's Dogma 1 until you get to the last 1/3 of the game where you get literally told, yeah, this is the real Dragon's Dogma 2. Everything else was just Dragon's Dogma 1 again. Which is, by the way, true. Look into that if you don't know about it. But in any case, it is pretty wild. It is pretty wild. And I think this is definitely confirmation, considering the way that Dragon's Dogma 2 was built and created and everything that they did. This seems like the perfect way to just unleash an expansion.
Started to dig through Northern Region references that were in Dragon's Dogma 2, and there were quite a few. An abundance of magical energy has been detected on the northern edge of Vermund, though the source is as yet unknown. Okay, you see that on the loading screen? Whatever. Another one here. The north of the continent is said to be home to an ancient nation, but records of its existence are scarce, and there has been no contact with its people for over a century. So again, something happened over there. We're not sure what exactly it is. And then one more time. Hyperboreal Lorica. Armor set here. Armor that glitters with sublime light, forged in honor of the deity to whom the Hyperboreans, a legendary bow-wielding people of the north, trace their...
Bro, when I hear the name Hyperboreans, I instantaneously think about the true god Yashin. If you know, you know. And the Hyperborean war. Oh boy, listen. When you use names like this, I instantaneously think big cranium. Boys, again, if you know, you know. If you don't know, don't even ask in the comments what this is. This is a rabbit hole you are not ready for yet, my sweet dear summer child. You do not want to know these arcane arts.
So there's
praise be upon him.
Multiple mentionings of something from the north. And then we see this letter here talking about the northern region, which is, again, in this celebration image with dude in the back who just does not want to be bothered. Okay, and we don't see him in the game. So it's clear something's being teased here, I think. Very subtly. It's the perfect type of tease. This is subtle enough where I'm like, they might just be having some fun. But also, I think they're trying to communicate something to us. And I love this sort of stuff. Okay, what we're probably looking at here is a Dark Arisen 2 moment for this game. A re-release, if you will. That is what the first game got. But I think the first game had more problems than Dragon's Dogma 1 did at launch. There were some things that were, I think, attached to the personality of the game that I love that people found irritable, such as how often your pawns talked in the first game. This was a big problem. I thought it was hilarious, right? Just hearing the same lines over and over, but people didn't like that. So that was something that a re-release in Dark Arisen fine-tuned that stuff. But there was also a lot of rebalancing that was done. One thing that people did not like about
And those cuts are really awkward, huh?
Dragon's Dogma that I loved and still love is kind of what you actually find right now in Crimson Desert. Like, you go into Crimson Desert and there was, until they updated the game like 2 days later, a lot of friction in its open world exploration. You had to be very calculated about going out there. And I think it works better for Dragon's Dogma because it was really designed with the idea of challenging you, massive boss fights, that sort of thing. Crimson Desert has its moments where it completely holds your hand through every step, and then other times where it wants to let you off the leash and just to kind of be Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 or Dragon's Dogma. And I don't think you can have your cake and eat it too. Like, I think you have to be consistent in that design. So they're clearly picking their path with reducing open world friction and fast travel points by really focusing on, I think, a more accessible approach. I don't think Dragon's Dogma was built to be accessible. And so when the game first came out, things like
Dragon's Dogma 2 was not built to be accessible, but that's what makes it also unique. And that was fine, in my opinion.
Fast travel was expensive and not really easy to come by. So one thing that the Dark Arisen re-release did was it adjusted some of these irritants. So they changed the cost of the Fairy Stone to allow you to fast travel to certain points in the game, how you set it up. This also added the Port Crystal to Casardis, so you could go back to the starter town with ease. So there was...
Do you think people would not complain about this if there was a bigger enemy variety? I think a bigger enemy variety would have been massive. You know, some kind of event type of variety of enemies would have been cool also. But I think that would have made it so that people don't complain that much about fast travel. Though, granted, people are always going to complain about fast travel not being a thing and fast travel being a thing. It's just a no real good answered thing.
There's a lot of open world navigation that originally you'd have to plan your runs, basically. Like, going out at nighttime in Dragon's Dogma, big mistake. But now, like, you know, that difficulty is still there, but you can still, again, go out there and come back home a little bit easier instead of going out. But I love the journey still. Like, going out during the daytime and be like, okay, I got to get back, but it's nighttime and different bosses lurk at nighttime. I love that stuff. So they had to smooth that stuff out in Dragon's Dogma 1. They rebalanced a bunch of stuff. Like, they rebalanced the assassin vocation. They added 100 new pieces of like tier 3 equipment. High level gear was added. I'm looking at my list here. 58 new level 3 skills, new skills for each of the character classes.
Wow.
And then the kind of cap on top was the Bitter Black Isle expansion. This was a high-level endgame dungeon that was added to Dragon's Dogma 1. It added like 30-plus new enemies, a bunch of new weapons, and a bunch of new bosses. And that was kind of like where people wanted to go to really test their skills, but also it added like a new final boss to the game, kind of rounded things out. It was, again, like the definitive version. Like, nowadays, when you hand someone Dragon's Dogma, you hand them Dark Arisen. It was a great improvement to an already, I thought, excellent game, but it definitely refined some of those rough edges. Again, I think that Dragon's Dogma 2 has less rough edges, for sure. But that said, I'm here for more of it. So that would be cool with me. And maybe even adjusting to feedback that people had that they found annoying, that maybe they can make it a little more clear here. Like, one thing people had issues with Dragon's Dogma 2 was missable content. And sometimes it wasn't clear. I love that Dragon's Dogma 2.
Missable content is... I honestly think that this is the same conversation, almost the same. It's slightly different, but not a lot. As in leagues in games like Path of Exile, Last Epoch, even Diablo 4. You know, there are people who don't like to miss out on anything and to lose progress, so they only play standard. Okay, if you want to create the ultimate, most strongest record breaking something in standard, or you just want to be super mega ultra rich, then I understand that you want to play standard. But for literally everyone else, even though there are people who don't like to lose their progress, the moment you experience the joys of a new league, you understand how it is. And that, I think, is exactly the same type of situation. People who want to experience everything miss out on the feeling of experiencing just part of it and then playing maybe again and experiencing things that you did not know were there. I personally love that. I'm an absolute mega fan of games that make things missable, make experiences, not exactly hidden, but you can easily just go past them if you're not thinking about something. I absolutely enjoy it and love it. That's why Fallout New Vegas is such a great game, because there's a lot of experience you can actually miss if you just run straight to something, and so on and so on. Tainted Grail has a lot of experiences that you can miss. It's great.
Ran on a clock, ran on a timer, and that there were points where quests would fail if you spent too long away from that NPC. Like, it really played into the time factor that already was in the first game. The first game, you had to be deliberative. When I go out, what time of day is it? But now it's like, when I go out, what quest am I doing? And am I ignoring something else? I felt it made that quest pressure very real that doesn't exist in really any other game. Basically, any other game out there, you can take on any quest whenever. They'll be like, my wife's dying in a cave full of goblins. Please help. But then there's this dissonance between the game and the quest urgency, because then I can just go and fight someone for like 500 hours, roam a bunch of dungeons, and get to this later and be like, oh, hey, what's up? And then you help him and he's like, thank you, God, you jumped on this so quickly. Thank you. And I'm like, no, I didn't. And like, that disconnect will happen in big open world games. But I love how real that, again, that sort of timer felt in Dragon's Dogma 2. But could they communicate that a little bit better? Sure. Dragon's Dogma 2 also had this like disease.
Man, those cuts are so fucking unbelievably awkward, boys. Leave it in the comments if that's super awkward. Oh boy.
That would kill you and the whole town. And it would spread in a very hard to detect way. You'd have to look at people's eyes. I did not have my playthrough nuked by this, but knowing about it when I heard about it, and then looking for people who I was like, oh, that pawn is fucked. I am not taking that pawn in. I thought there was a fun little bit of tension there. So again, I'm not trying to overly defend Dragon's Dogma 2. I get it that it's got some issues for people, but
there's no reason to defend it. Most people like it. There are some people who don't like it, but those people are kind of the super minority. Dragon's Dogma 2 is similar in the way that people critique it, that people critiqued Crimson Desert at the start. Interesting, no?
I feel like it took a lot of the edges that were smooth after Dragon's Dogma 1 and Dark Arisen, brought them into 2, and kind of stayed true to the series' identity. I also love the end game moment, we'll just say, with Dragon's Dogma 2 and how it reinvents its open world map. Again, without spoiling, I thought that was brilliant. I think you could have done more with it, and I think that's where they'll probably go with it as well. But I just love that they like committed so hard to that direction, and it wasn't like this major piece of the game. And they were like, no, we're just like reinventing this completely. So I think Dragon's Dogma as a series is fantastic. So I, as a fan, I'm just excited for more. But to see that it looks like they're probably going to be doing more content in what I imagine would be, given the gap of time. I don't think you can just show up and be like, here's an expansion or here's a little paid DLC. I think this is a full...
I think they can do that easily.
Re-release, a more holistic rebalancing and additions on every level. And I'm sure it'll come out this year, and I will be there day one. I will be all over.
I mean, it has to come out this year. Again, the fact that Dragon's Dogma 2 does not get a DLC or something is preposterous. It succeeded on pretty much virtually every level. So again, so what are we supposed to expect? A game that does good doesn't get a DLC? Impossible. Heresy, honestly. Anyway, that was Mr. Matty Plays 10 out of 10. Bye.